Present here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll ask Senator Tillery, would you lead us today? You're number 5 there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the safety of letting us get here. Thank you for the nourishment of the lunch, and thank you for just a safe place to be. Lord, we ask you protect our men and women overseas as they're engaged in this conflict, to protect American lives at home. I ask you give us wisdom as we deliberate, and that we would pass policies that would only help Georgians and not harm them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So for the first bill, I think I'll go down here and present.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you'll find Senate Bill 566 from Senator Huffstetler in your folders. Chairman
All right.
Huffstetler, we're looking at LC 443502S, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, we'll
Mr.
turn it to you.
Chairman. All right, so first of all, let me get you to look in your folder, if you would, and you're going to see something like this sheet right here. So we worked with, and I guess James is here. Okay. Maybe you can go ahead and sit up here too. We worked with the Paulding County Assessor, who sometimes takes the lead on stuff at the state level, on this issue. And basically, we wanted to clean this up and have it, and I know you're going to say, well, it looks pretty wordy now, but it was and has been a lot worse. We wanted to clean this up. And so we kind of got together and said, what is a good way for it to look? And after that got designed, then we backed the legislation into it, instead of writing legislation and then seeing what happens later on. So what the intent of this is to focus the notice of assessment on its intended purpose, the value of the property, and which exemptions have been applied. So I think this will be simpler for taxpayers, and hopefully give them the information that's there. I'm not saying it doesn't still look a little complicated, but I feel like this is the best we could do on it, to clean this up and sort of try to clean up some stuff that maybe was ambiguous back from House Bill 581. So let me go to Section 1 first on that bill. And basically what we're saying there is that if there was a mistake made on this notice, we send out 3 notices. If there's a mistake made on the notice and it's not the county or the city's fault, it's something that maybe the font wasn't right or the size of it wasn't right or whatever, and they had provided the correct information, that the clock doesn't reset. We have to get the corrected one out there, but we're not resetting the clock. And in some counties, we have maybe papers only once a week, and so then they're delayed a week getting it out. I will say, talking with Reagan from the newspaper, he thinks this is covered another way, but my request was that we look at that in the House side, and we'll continue to work on that in the meantime. But we don't want to delay the process of getting it out if it's through no fault of the county's own, and there's always the argument of whose fault was it, but I think clearly it has to be with it. But the issue is the DOR is rejecting these. There's a dispute over where they should reject them if it's something that minor, but they feel like they're following their rules and rejecting it. Section 2 breaks out the tax amounts by cities. And this is the part that I will tell you I've got to watch in the process, and I'll explain why. And I would prefer that we go ahead with this, but we are assuming that the opt-out is taken out in this process. I feel like it's gonna be, but I'll have to watch and make sure we don't agree to anything if for any reason the opt-out is not taken out and applied statewide. Then we need to look at this language before final agreement to it. But it cleans up a lot of stuff that would not be necessary there. Section 3 deals with substantial property change. so that, we're taking into account, we've had, I guess it could be from a hurricane or anything else, destruction of real property. And then you've got to rebuild. And, we didn't really have a good mechanism on how to deal with that. And so that's what we're dealing with in Section 3. Section 4 is really going to close the language where a taxpayer can file for homestead exemption before their April 1st deadline, but then cannot file again until after the 45 appeal window opens up when they get their notice of assessment. And so if they file for the homestead exemption during this gap, some jurisdictions have been interpreting the law as saying the application cannot be accepted and the taxpayer must wait. This is going to give them more time and flexibility by allowing homestead exemption applications anytime between January 1st, as it is now April 1st, but anytime before the end of the 45-day appeal period. I think that's very taxpayer friendly. It's also a requirement that taxpayers notify the Board of Assessors if they're ineligible for the homestead exemption, and that language is reflected on the front of the sheet there. And in addition on that, I believe this is the section, let me be sure. We're basically putting it on there, but saying, as it is right now, they actually can have a 100% penalty. This would make it be a 50% penalty if they have incorrectly applied for it. But we're also, I think, putting it on this notice that, we're giving them written notice. If you lose your homestead exemption, if you rent the house and then come back years later, it doesn't reset to that original value on it. So I think that makes that pretty clear. Section 6 is going to require some coordination between and among the local tax officials, Department of Revenue, to make sure that there's only one homestead exemption given out. Their Department of Revenue is going to maintain a list of homestead exemptions granted or denied throughout the state, which local officials shall review prior to approving a homestead exemption. I'm sure you've heard stories of people getting them in multiple jurisdictions in the past. That usually only seems to come up and be highlighted when somebody's running for office, but it still should be there. And then Section 7 just basically, is focusing on this notice of assessment. What's the previous year value? What's the current year value? What's changed? What exemptions are available? If you look down the side there, it's what exemptions are available. We clearly put on there who the taxpayer should contact about possible other exemptions that they might be eligible for that are listed there, and how they appeal. It lists all the different ways on the right side over there how they can appeal. And lastly, there is a provision authorizing the Department of Revenue to make additional changes after consulting with the House Ways and Means and the Senate's Finance Committee. So with that, somewhat thorough, but at the same time not completely thorough of everything in there. I'll entertain questions, and I'm sure James has been an expert around the state on this as well. Dante from ACCG, I think, is out sick today, so we won't have him here to testify. I told him to stay home.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, thank you for bringing this bill forward. About 7-8 years ago, several of us started, I think, part of this process in Fulton County, where we had capped all of our tax rates, and actually we reset everybody's value back to the lowest amount it was in 2016, 17, and 18, and put that 3% escalator in, or the CPI, whichever was lower. So some of the same stuff that I believe you did in your local area and then ultimately drove statewide. One of the challenges we still face all the time, though, and I think this will address part of it, is we are showing what the previous value and the new value is. The question we have all the time is people see the value change and they think their taxes went up. And I usually have to have them take out their last couple of years of tax bills and put them all next to each other to show the actual amount of their tax bill hasn't changed. I don't see it on here, but would it actually show them what their prior year or year before's actual tax bill was on this new version?
This one doesn't. One of the issues the schools, the cities, the counties all have different numbers, and I think seems to have confused everybody on it. So I'm not saying this is a perfect one, but it does list the exemptions that they've got over there, and it would list, you know, their floating homestead exemption is going to be over there. That will show what it is.
I don't want to slow you down, but perhaps as this continues through the process, maybe you'd consider looking at something like that just to clear the confusion up for folks, so they can see if last year they paid, you know, plus or minus a few percent, that they would feel better about not understanding the difference of the value change versus what the floating homestead.
The
did to
problem
their
is
tax
we
rate.
don't know the millage rate either that's going to be applied. It seems like all these estimated amounts are always wrong.
That is true.
At least in my area, and so that's, they're going to see that when the tax bill itself comes out. This is just a notice of assessment. I understand your point. It's been a struggle to get accurate information out that is simple enough for people to understand.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Questions from the committee members to the bill's author? Question from the majority leader.
I don't really have a question. I just want to first thank Chairman Hosteller for all his work on this. I mean, this has taken a lot of time, and then I do want to say thank you to my tax assessor in Paulding County, Mr. James Stokes, and for his collaboration and working with so many of the assessors across the state to try and change this so it is more taxpayer friendly, and our citizens have documents in front of them to really understand kind of what they're paying for, especially as we've seen so many local governments increase taxes and the changes in law. I think whatever we can do this year and then even into the future to bring clarity to the taxpayer, I think is really important. So I just want to thank both of y'all for taking this up, doing it, and look forward to getting this across the finish line once and for all. So thank you.
Thank you, Leader Anavitarte. Other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, James, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the committee, and if you want to say anything additional.
Yes, sir. My name is James Stokes. I'm the Chief Appraiser in Paulding County. I'm also the Legislative Director for the Georgia Association of Assessing Officials. So we've got about 1,700 members scattered across about 150 counties. We've been working on primarily the notice of assessment for years. Ever since they started adding the estimated tax on that assessment notice, property owners really started coming and appealing tax. You're appealing value, and you're appealing the denial of exemptions and things. So our world started blurring of what you're actually appealing. We work with our homeowners constantly on trying to get a notice that the majority of your everyday citizen could understand what you're actually appealing, what does the process look like moving forward, and simply who do I contact to address questions. Getting rid of a lot of the, legal mumbo jumbo that a lot of people just simply do not understand, and trying to get this in the hands of property owners and help them make the best decision that they feel is right for them. We're addressing questions in the legal advertisement for the digest submission. That newspaper ad requires 30 square inches, and sometimes when we submit that to the newspaper, what is submitted even with, it's got to be 30 square inches and not in the legal section. Whoever put it in the newspaper, when we finally get it, doesn't meet the Department of Revenue standards. And so the digest is automatically denied, and this just gives the Department of Revenue a little bit of flexibility. If we can prove that, hey, we did everything right, it's just for whatever reason the newspaper didn't get it right. So we're asking for a few more guardrails on homestead exemption. The state's homestead exemption is becoming stronger and worth more to the individual property owners. So are local exemptions. There are several instances of people claiming multiple homesteads in multiple jurisdictions, and there's not a readily available source for us to bump up against a list to see if James is claiming one in Paulding County and in Cobb County. So I think the bill overall, as far as property owners, is very pro-taxpayer. And I think it really does kind of clarify some of the the issues that we may have seen since 581 came into play, and it's addressing some of the questions that at the county level. And I'll be glad to address any questions.
You do have a couple questions. I'll call on Senator Hickman.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. Nothing about what we're talking about here, but, you know, we're seeing a lot of these small counties, the newspaper, which is Legal Oregon, is slowly going out of business. I'm sure y'all are addressing that, thinking about what's going to happen going forward to protect these citizens and all.
That's above my pay scale. That's an issue I think the legislator has tried to address before. Right now, is the way the law is written, it just gives the Department of Revenue a little bit of flexibility to take a look at our information to say, hey, they did the right thing. It was just the newspaper that, for whatever reason, it came out wrong. The ad came out wrong.
I'm actually talking about some of these smaller counties that may not even have a newspaper,
Right.
or like a county joining me, Evans County, the newspaper may be going out of business.
Right.
So what happens then for legal notices?
This does not really address this.
Yeah, I think that'll be on a separate bill. All right, I got a question from Senator Anderson.
On the same line of thought, I know about 4 or 5 years ago, we did a bill, and I don't know if it passed or not, to where if a county put it on their website
Right.
and they didn't have a local paper.
The way I understand the bill is written today, it requires the notice, the 30 square inches, to be in the local newspaper and to not be in the legal section of the newspaper. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see where it gives us flexibility or put it in the put it on the website. We do have everything is automatically on our website. I don't know how other jurisdictions are doing it, but from my understanding, that's not an option with this legal advertisement that has to be part of that
Can't remember
digest.
whether it got passed or not. Okay, thank you.
Question from Senator Still.
Thank you, Chairman. How many counties did you say that you represent with what you're doing?
About 150.
What are the other 9 doing differently?
Off the top of my head, though, they're sporadic. They're counties that we just really don't have any activity. They're smaller counties.
Got it.
Like-
Okay. So not
It's
major
not
metro,
Fulton, it's not Gwinnett, it's not Cobb.
small, rural.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we got a late arriving question from Senator Orrock.
Thank you so much, and there may be more detail to this that you can provide on the side, but the connection between commercial assessment and the residential properties, are you assessing both?
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. And is there a reason why commercial assessments are so radically lower than what the property's been selling for? And I raise that because it, you know, when a county's looking at its whole budget and its millage rate and putting all those pieces together, it makes a difference about whether you're assessing commercial property appropriately and as opposed to these individually owned homes.
I would say at its core is the lack of information that's provided to the tax assessors. These commercial properties sell and are purchased based on an income stream. We simply do not get that income stream provided from the parties that are involved. Just like where you have your listing services, your MLS, your FMLS, we know everything about the sales. We send sales verifications out. We request income information. We get nothing.
I would underscore that. I mean that's important information for us to understand when we're trying to put together the appropriate policies at the state level that are required. So actually the commercial property owners don't comply. They don't provide the information that is needed to make the full disclosure or to get an accurate estimate or
It's-
assessment?
It's not required.
And I
It's-
appreciate the line of questioning, Senator, but that's not really germane to this bill, probably a separate conversation.
And that was the first thing I said,
Sure.
that there's a conversation to be pursued elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But it's connected, it's all connected when a county's putting its budget together.
All right, James, if you could make way, we're going to bring Mr. Nathan Corbett up from ACCG, last person who has signed up to speak on this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be in the Georgia State Senate, and I appreciate your time. I'll be very brief. ACCG supports this bill. Cleaning up confusion around the notice of assessment has been one of our legislative priorities, and we are thrilled that this is moving forward. We appreciate the chairman bringing this bill. We also appreciate the opportunity to have worked with GAAO, with James, who just spoke, in support of this bill. Also, very briefly, I'd like to say that we appreciate the Department of Revenue for working with us, particularly on the language in Section 1, which provides necessary revisions regarding publication and notice. And thank you all.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, seeing no one else signed up, Chairman Huffstetler, would you like to make any final comments?
I don't have anything in particular, but I do agree the commercial assessments are an issue. They're an issue in Bartow County, and that's a separate thing we do need to deal with. Where the counties are outmanned on that, but that's for another day.
All right. Any further discussion from the committee? Seeing none, what is the will of the committee? Moved to pass from the majority leader. I got a second from Senator Hickman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Looks unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Good luck in the Rules Committee.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on back to the top there with Senator Hickman. We had a bill presented before that had a couple of issues with it. One was the way it was done, it wasn't going to sunset the other when they were actually going to run simultaneously. So I met with the chairman and Ledge Council and worked on that issue. I also looked at the sunset date as well. So with that, if you guys want to present.
Well, yes, sir. Thank you. And I cannot thank you enough for working with you. You were very cooperative, and we got it done. And I thank you for that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Mr. Chairman, with your help, we have cleared up a couple of items in the bill that you had questioned, and I'm sure the other members did. We did change the sunset to 5 years, which is on page 8. Page 9, participating teachers on or after January 1 of 2027 was $2,500. And then on page 9 also, participating teachers, since this bill originally sunset 12/31/26, so teachers that were involved before 12/31/26 will still maintain the $3,000, and then ones effective 1/1/27 will be $2,500. However, on your guidance, Mr. Chairman, we put the most important part, line 2007 through 2010, said under no circumstances would the credit exceed $3 million a year, because Senator Steele, you will have some carryover a little bit, and that's what the chairman was concerned about, that you may, through the carryover from one $3,000 credit and $2,500 credit, you may have more than $3 million. And we've corrected that by putting it in the bill and said in no circumstance would the credit be any more than $3 million a year. And then the bill does become effective 1/1/27. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for helping us out on that. And if you got any questions, we'd be glad to entertain some questions.
Sure.
Just a quick comment. I appreciate all the work y'all are doing on this, but I just want to let you know in advance, no new tax credits from me. So when you see my no vote, nothing personal. I just think it's time we stop doing onesies and we helped everybody. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I respect that.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question to Chairman Hickman. On page 8, line 182, qualifying public schools in a rural territory. I've never seen that in a bill before. Is there a definition of rural territory?
Well, I
Something
think that
okay.
it further in the bill, it basically says it's a 25% school.
I see on line 57.
57
Uh-huh.
defines.
Yes, ma'am. And I shared many stories with y'all as why we chose the 25% schools.
All right, so the potential, in my mind, when I left the meeting the other day, was that 3 million could go to 6 million for a few years. And so that was important to make sure we keep the $3 million cap on there, whether it goes on or not. The last thing I wanted was a long sunset and a long,
Yes, sir.
you know,
That's
basically
correct.
a double credit on there. So I think those have been worked on, but then you get back to the other underlying issue of the tax credits. And so, any other questions from the committee? Senator Steele?
Thank you, Chairman. While I always agree about no new tax increases, I don't think we can do enough for our teachers. So at the appropriate time, I'd like a motion to
Well, I don't see any other questions, so this would be the time.
All right, motion to pass SB 515, LC 492750.
Have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All right, any opposed? All right, we have one opposed.
I think we know who he is.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee
Head on the
members.
rules.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we've got Senate Bill 410. That's Chairman Brass, if you want to come up. Go ahead and tell the committee a little bit of some stuff that's going on here. We had as you know, we had a session that ended with no action on Thursday. Personally think there should have been action taken in will of the Committee on Democracy, but it wasn't. And so I was asked if I would look in the spirit of democracy at doing something here in this committee, and I will. So we've got a bill, and I'll let you, well, why don't you address it first,
Sure.
Chairman Brass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for hearing SB 410. And to your point, I think you and I and many others kind of know the backstory of all this, but I think it's important for the public to understand the backstory of what happened on Thursday. So what came out of committee on SB 34 was not your original language. We all know that. There was a disagreement on various parties on what the language did, the effect of it, and I think the overall intent for everyone involved was the same, and that was to ensure that our residential and our retail customers were not bearing the brunt of cost and upgrades for our large load customers, i.e. data centers. I think we all agree on that. It was how we get there and what the words on the page mean. And so where we've landed with SB 410, we have taken SB 34, the language that came out of committee that was to be voted on Thursday. We have incorporated that into SB 410, the original SB 410. And we have added language prior to that. So if you look on lines 12 through 14, in this it says, it is the intent of the General Assembly that the marginal cost of providing electric service to new large load customers will be borne by such customers and not residential or retail electricity customers. So we are being very clear on the intent of the law that we all agree on. Now, as we all know this, but again, it's important for the public to understand that language will not be in the law. It will be in the notes to the code. And the notes to the code can be used by the courts to help guide the court's interpretation of our law. So our overall intent is covered with that language. And then if you continue on through part 1 on page 2, that is SB 34 as it came out of committee that was to be voted on last Thursday. So that language is there, the intent is there, and I don't know how it could be more clear on what we're doing. You know, again, there was a lot of confusion on what we were doing, but I think we all agreed what we were trying to do, and so I think this lands us there. Getting into part 2, this was the original SB 410 with one addition. The first sub that you presented, you wanted to add in 68, and that's the computer equipment. We already had 68.1, which is the high technology data center equipment, meaning there's no new certificates of exemption on those equipment for any future projects. So all that has been captured. Anyone that is currently here, they are grandfathered in, just as we've discussed on the original bill. So the sunset still remains, and it remains at its current date, which I believe is 2031, end of the 2031. So that all still exists, and 410 is back in its pretty much in its original form with the addition of your suggested adding that computer equipment.
And the 68.0, I believe, ends January 1st of 28. And I think you're
Yeah,
correct.
I believe you're
The
right.
other one's
That's correct.
January 1st of 32. So
Correct.
the sunsets are not affected in this bill. The intent of the legislature is here. It's not codified into law, which would be my preference. But it's basically what's been worked out.
That's correct. I didn't get everything I wanted, and that's what we call compromise, which I know is a bad word in today's world, but
I make a motion to appropriate time.
Any questions? If not, go ahead, Senator Albers, with a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we pass the substitute to Senate Bill 410, LC 590402S.
Have a second by Senator Still. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, let me do the question first then. You gotta hit your light thing if I'm gonna do that though.
So just clarifying, when is the expiration date of data centers that are already?
It's not there because it's not being affected, so there's no new law. But I can
Okay.
tell you, it is January 1st of 2032. They are no longer
Right.
there unless the sunset is extended. The computer equipment is January 1st of 2028
Yep.
unless those are extended.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Halpern.
Thank you. I appreciate the compromise. I will vote for this bill. I do want to just say that I do have some concerns about the elimination of those tax credits. And I know that hopefully we will come back and have conversations before those sunsets, because I know that those tax credits have been really instrumental in allowing us to have some of our biggest corporate Fortune 500, Fortune 100 partners actually, enjoy the business environment that we are creating here in Georgia. So I would love to see us come back and talk about those before we get to 2028 and 2032. But for the moment,
I hope I'm not here for that discussion in 2032 anyway, but.
Ditto.
Let's see. Senator Hodges.
Yeah, one quick question. That you said that the intent of the law is not codified, but it's in the notes
My understanding
that a judge
is-
may use and formulate an opinion. Is that,
that is
would some lawyer help explain the practical effect of that to me?
you're the only one.
Unless
Oh, we got one. Got two.
unless Senator Brass wants to practice law.
opinion? Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It goes to legislative intent if you look at it. There's some courts that say legislative intent doesn't matter. What matters is the words on the page. But if they did look at legislative intent, they go back and they'll look at our bill and they'll look at the preamble.
So it might matter and it might not.
That's fair.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
fair.
All right, any other questions by the committee? I don't see any. All in favor, raise your hand. Looks unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you.
I'll be carrying this bill.
We've got one more here in your folder there. It's Senate Bill 576 by Senator Tillery. You can do it from here or there, whatever your preference is. Sure.
Senate Bill 576, you know, we've talked about affordability and we talked about housing. And one of the things that we've seen is the attacks on that has been the attack on, we're talking about housing, 576. The attack on, one of the attacks on the cost of housing we've said has been big institutions buying up the housing market and bidding against families when they're in that process. Senate Bill 576, there's been several ways that folks have attacked this. Some have capped it and said, hey, an institutional investor can't own more than 2,000 houses, and I think the 2,000 number was kind of arbitrary. Instead of capping it or saying, making it illegal to own so many houses, all that 576 does is makes it be more costly to own more than 2,000 houses. As you know, right now, when property is assessed, we assess it at 40% of the market value. Senate Bill 576 just says, hey, if you own more than 2,000 of those houses, we're going to assess it at 100% of the value, trying to use a dollar approach rather than an outright ban. If you own more than 2,000. It's an arbitrary number. I mean, is that a question for? Sure could be.
I may be reading this wrong. It says on lines 15 and 16 that does not own in excess of 2,000.
Correct.
It does not say that does own in excess.
So
I
that
thought
is
we
the
were
definition
targeting-
of a community housing provider. And what we said is a community housing provider owns less than 2,000 homes. They are assessed the way properties assessed right now, 40%. If you're more than 2,000 homes, then you are defined on lines
26, 27.
Correct. Housing provider, and that's someone who owns more than 2,000 single-family residences. They would be assessed at 100% of the value rather than the 40% value.
I agree. It's a little confusing at first because it's setting a definition, not who
Defines
it
it in the negative.
Yes, defining who it doesn't apply to, really. Senator Hodges. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Senator Albers was first. Let me get him. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tillery, I like your bill. I think it's addressing something important. What would prohibit a company from simply just spinning up another company and having 1,999 houses in a separate entity?
Yeah, we tried our best to do that in lines 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Tried to think through all those things. But you're right. Look, and there's going to be actors in this that play around the edge of the rules. Does it make it more expensive for them to then have to jump through the hoops of another corporation, other filings? Honestly, when you file a corporation in Georgia, it's $100 to renew a year. I think they might have just jumped it to $200 a year. That's not going to stop this. What might stop it, though, is the accounting and filing the tax returns. Those are a lot more expensive than just the annual filings themselves.
Thank you.
Now, go ahead, Senator Hodges now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Tillery. I also like Bill, just very quickly in reading through the definitions. If I own 10 rental houses and I want to own them in Michael Hodges Incorporated, just a corporation, not a subchapter, or just, that works? A
You can still do
corporation
that.
can be, as long as it's the 2,000. I didn't see the word corporation.
Yeah, we tried to define it through as many times through here as we could. But again, the point is If you want to own 10,
Right.
if you want to own 100,
Yeah.
and Senator, I think Senator Orrock brought this up. The 2,000 is completely arbitrary. I grabbed it to say
I'm
we're not
fine
trying
with
to
the 2,000.
grab people. We're not trying to get small owners, and I think the argument can be made that small owners have a lot less than 2,000.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you own them and it's less than 2,000, you're taxed
Okay.
the same way as it is now. But if you own more than 2,000, we would provide some type of a financial incentive or disincentive rather for you to buy more.
Regardless of the way in which you own them.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. That's what I needed. Thank you.
We've got a few other questions, but a couple of points I want to clarify is this is at the option of the local government. Is that correct?
The option of the local government actually goes to a question that came in earlier that you heard Mr. The tax assessor from Paulding County. Gosh, can't think of his name.
James.
Present, where he said, hey, one of the reasons why we're ending up with these weird assessments is folks really are valuing these based on the income approach. So what this bill does allow is that if a local assessor or a local tax commissioner decides they're going to take an income approach to these, that they can ask for the income streams to
And that was going to be my second point. If you look at line 26,
28.
if you're not a community housing provider, you shall provide the tax assessor the data necessary to use an income approach. So this gets to the point Senator Orrock was making. I was sitting over there thinking about it. We're going to get to your point later on. That's why I made another comment about it at the time. All right. Let's see. I believe it's Senator Anna Vitarte.
I was gonna yield to my property assessor and see how he feels about this, if he's comfortable doing that.
Hey, you're still here, James. Sorry.
Sure. We'll let James come up.
Mr. Stokes. Yeah.
Right. Though I would say he doesn't set the 100% value. I would assume that would be the county commission that would determine that.
I have glassed over the bill. My understanding, there's a lot of bills going out with the large institutional owners. And correct me if I'm wrong with any of this. Is this one of the bills where they're bringing in and we're making a determination if you're either at 100 or the 40?
Correct.
And they have the appeal rights, okay?
Or they could be in between. If I'm reading this bill right, they could be at 80. No
As long
more
as
than
they're less
100.
than
At the local government's discretion.
Okay, so getting back to the terminology in there, if you are this specific type property owner, that the Board of Assessors can request that income information from them, and then they have to provide it to us. That would be a move in the right direction.
Well, it doesn't say may, it says shall in Senator Tillery's legislation.
That's what I think he wanted.
Yeah, that's line, starting on line 26 there. If you want to look at that.
Yeah, that's what I remember from it.
All right. Okay, Senator Anderson, I think, was next, unless you had any more comments, Senator Anna Vitarte.
No, you can't always trust some of the commissioners out there, so we gotta do what's best for the citizens. Otherwise, we wouldn't be legislating on behalf of these local elected officials all the time. No offense to GMA and ACCG, but that's kind of where we're at.
All right, Senator Anderson, you're up.
If a firm or business owned, say, 2,000 units in South Carolina and they own 1,000 in Georgia, and it's the same country, have we got enough to say, is that enough evidence to be able to say that you would be taxed at 100%
No, sir. It has to be 2,000 units in Georgia.
in Georgia?
Yep. And the way we prove that later is through an attestation, which is the same way we do homestead, that you attest that you own less. The penalty would be if you are found to own more than 2,000 in Georgia, then the penalty would be the back due taxes and the tax penalties that are assessed through any other means when you found to attest falsely on your property tax returns.
All right, Senator Dolezal, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for bringing the bill. I think you and I are both trying to tackle the same problem. The White House put out their executive order since we passed the bill that I had out of whatever committee it was in, I forget, economic development, and they're at 100 units on theirs. I was at 500 on mine. This is 2,000. I've seen 2,000 in the House. As I understand it, 2,000 would impact like 8 or 9 institutional owners in Georgia. Is that correct?
I've got a list, and we're not trying to go after them, so I purposely didn't, let's say the list. Also, I want you to know that I'm not sure that we know the list is right. We think it kind of looks low. I am open to amendments. We put 2,000 to start the conversation. I think the conversation's going pretty strong right now. We see where groups are going here. What we're trying to tackle, and I think, Senator, you're trying to tackle it too, is you've got young families who are having to bid against corporations from Wall Street on whether or not they're going to be able to own their first home, and they're never going to be able to outbid them.
That's right.
So if there's an amendment to take it smaller, please know that I will accept it as friendly.
So I'll let you make your own amendment on that, because I don't want to mess up your bill. I do think getting below 2,000 would be helpful. My concern, or I more so want your thoughts, because I think you maybe even signed my bill. I don't remember, so I'm not saying that you're positioned against these two, but this essentially raises rent for people that are renting, right? So you're just going to have higher property taxes, and there's nothing in here that either prevents the acquisition or has any sort of divestment. The divestment piece obviously gets dicey. The limiting further accumulation, though, does change the demand curve, I think, in a way that gets to solve your problem. What are your thoughts on essentially preventing the accumulation beyond 2,000 and doing more than just charging them extra, which in some percentage will just get passed on to a renter?
Yeah, I don't think it raises your rent. What I do is I think it changes the business decision of the structure of a business to begin with. They decide, do we invest in housing or do we invest in other opportunities? I think they're going to decide they invest in other opportunities, which will then allow that housing investment to be able to be made by the single family, what we're hoping is the young home owner. So I don't accept the premise that it raises rent. I will clearly accept any amendment. I hope it's clear. The 2,000 was a starter. Knowing where the conversations had started in other places of this building, I didn't want the fact that my number was so low to keep us from being able to get to this point in the room to have the discussion. So that a lower number, happy to.
Okay. Can I just one quick follow-up? And you may have answered this. I'm sorry if you did. Does the 100% tax kick in for the further accumulation, or if I own 2001 today? Yeah. Where does that apply?
The 2,000. So let's go into the bill. On some of the last pages, it started like 137. And I think the chairman was trying to say this, but he's trying to preserve time too. The 100% is not, that in and of itself is somewhat negotiable too by the local county governments. So you see that it says it may be assessed up to 100%. So if they wanted to say, hey, after 2,000, we're going to do 50%, they can do that. Up to 2001. I'm okay with all those things. What I want to do is provide an opportunity for the local governments, us providing that opportunity, to say, hey, look, we're going to pick families over Main Street, and we're going to use dollars to incentivize that. So I didn't want that hard cliff at 2,000. I think, Senator, where you were going, that hard cliff would be something that might make businesses decide that they're going to, split into 1,999 owners and units, and then split to another thing from there.
All right, Senator Steele, and then I've got 3 others that want to take a second bite at this, so go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Tillery, I'm looking for the language in the bill. I'm trying to understand. So if we use 2,000 as a benchmark, we already have companies in Georgia that own many more than that number. So what happens to their inventory greater than 2,000?
A couple of things could happen. One, they could split, as you've already said, or you may see us truly begin to push the cost of housing, single-family housing, down as they begin to divest. I think either one of those options is a possibility.
Does that create a housing crisis where we're going to flood the market with an excess of inventory in a rapid fashion that may create unintended consequences?
You could flood the market. If you flooded the market, though, then you're going to let single-family homes move out of rental units, out of what they might live in. And I'm not saying all rental units are slums, but some of them right now might be slums. They can move into a house that they own on their own. It's their largest personal investment. And as we know, the single-family home is the largest source of building not just family wealth, but generational wealth. If that were to happen, I think at least in the short term, we see incredible surge in family wealth.
If they can qualify for a mortgage.
If they qualify for a mortgage. Correct. But their mortgage, if what you say happens, their mortgage would be less than their rent. So their business decision would push them into a single family home. And we're doing that without doing something that otherwise unfairly or unjustly moves the invisible hand of Keynesian economics.
Thanks.
I think Senator Halpern was next.
Thank you. So this does say properties. You've been talking properties, you've also been talking units, and I have a question just for clarification. If you have an owner who has a 100-unit apartment building, is that 100 properties or is that one property?
So remember, we're talking about single family residences.
So this whole.
So I'm not trying to go after the group necessarily that's building
the big
multifamily.
Right.
We're talking about what we've seen in this country of Wall Street finding it to be a good investment to invest in single family residences.
Yes.
And that Wall Street for many years has invested in multifamily residents, and I don't think we've seen that as a problem. We actually view that as a solution at times to our housing crisis. But when they're investing in single family residences, then that young family is never going to be able to outbid Wall Street.
Right, I understand that. Okay, so I think I see. So mine's 128 through 133 when we define
128?
housing provider there, and it says single-family residential property, that is the definition. I know, it's just not in the front.
Well,
So we define what
no,
it's
it's
not.
in the
and
front.
we
It's
define
just
what
the
it is.
H. There's so many definitions.
Yeah.
It goes all the way down to 133 for the definitions. So it is in the front, but just they define community housing provider, fair market value, those things first. And so you have to get to line 130 till you get to the definition of housing provider.
Okay,
But
well,
it's
I'm following you on page 6 now.
Yeah.
Okay, so the definition is specifically single-family residential property owners. Got it.
All right. Thank you, Senator Anavitarte.
Yeah, just a follow-up question, just kind of piggybacking on Senator Dozal. So does this bill do anything for the housing provider that's a tract home builder that's building 3,000 rental homes in a county?
Does it do anything to them, for them?
How does this play in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it for them, if you think that's beneficial. If someone's building 3,000 homes build to rent, they may want to rethink that, because after 2,000 homes, they would be assessed potentially up to 100% of the fair market value rather than being assessed on 40% of the fair market value. Now, if they want to take all those homes and build them and then sell them individually, perfectly fine. That doesn't affect them at all. But if they're building it for the purpose of build to rent, it likely would change at least the thought process in their business model.
I may disagree on that because those guys and ladies can print money all day long from Wall Street, so I don't know about that. Are you familiar?
I think I'm trying to address your issue, though.
Maybe. And what are your thoughts on, I know Senator Hawley in the U.S. Senate just introduced a bill that on this situation with institutional investors taking a little bit of a different approach, requiring that basically if you create a $150 million valuation towards a situation, that maybe that's the route to go instead of putting a number on whether it's 100 houses or 2,000 houses or whatever. That's a little bit ambiguous. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I understand Senator Hawley trying to address it from the national level, but remember, the powers of the federal government are limited. Coin money, common defense, things that are already enumerated in the Constitution. We've used the elastic clause of the Commerce Clause to get to a lot of things. My concern would be, will he be able to make that constitutional in a current court that seems to view original jurisdiction strictly. So if that's the case, then we're going to have to use the state's police powers, which we clearly have under the 10th Amendment. And again, if 2,000 is too big, more than happy to consider an amendment otherwise. But I do think our best way to attach it is through dollars, not through hard caps, which I think will be found to be unconstitutional.
Yeah, all I'll say for the record, I may support this bill, but at least in my situation in Paulding County, Georgia, and I have my tax assessor sitting right in front of me, so I know later he'll keep me straight if I'm saying something that's not technically correct. But the 2,000 or 3,000 homes that are being built down the street from my neighborhood in North Paulding County that are rental developments, number one, I think undermines the American dream. Number two, I'm not sure that this bill truly addresses what that means for infrastructure, the local community, and also in terms of a money saver to the taxpayer, as we're seeing those kind of developments basically do massive damage in a community that is unfortunately a bedroom community. I leave that at the feet of the local politicians because of history in our county. But that is my concern. And instead of, I think, the competing bill that I know Senator Dolezal is creating, that he's carrying. I'm not trying to debate the two right now. We'll talk about that offline. Where I think it's a very different approach, and I think sends a different message to our citizens in terms of having an impact to slow down things so local governments and more so the taxpayer, what is the long-term strategies in play for taxpayers so they don't get suffocated out of their own neighborhoods because of the rampant rental neighborhoods that are being built in Paulding County, Georgia.
Yeah. Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Senator, I would argue that mine actually limits the situation you presented more because it puts a financial decision on to that person who's developing that neighborhood of whether or not they think it's in their financial interest to do so any further. We did not exempt build to rent communities in this one. We left them in that because those are single family residences. And if they can be put into the market for young families to buy or older families who are looking to downsize to buy, I think that helps to better stabilize the market. So thank you for your comments.
Senator Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tillery, I really like your approach to solving this social issue, this policy issue. As a longtime Republican and conservative person, I have a real problem with the state standing between a willing buyer and a willing seller. But we don't owe anybody a tax preference. As a state, our local governments don't really owe anybody a tax preference, and we should direct those toward projects and people who will help our society and our state and help us accomplish our aims. I believe this does that a lot better than proscribing the number of units that someone can build. So I plan to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you brought up a point that we're all concerned about. We don't want to stand in the way of business, but we're actually not. Senator Orrick, I believe you were only one left, and then we'll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going again to the income producing property, and what we heard from our Paulding County expert is that it's difficult it's problematic about getting data to support those assessments, and that problem is created by this language. It's in already in law, right, on line 23, 24, 25, where it says the income approach, if data are available, shall be considered in determining the fair market value of income producing property. Does that language create deliberately or inadvertently the loophole that's allowing the income producing properties to ignore the request of the tax assessors? Am I reading that right? That's page 2, line 23 to 24.
Are you asking me, or I thought you were asking? I apologize, Senator. I thought you were asking our expert witness.
If you're asking me, there is no requirement, and I think that's an example of the law that specifically states that you don't have to.
It's not underlined, so that's current law
I know,
right now,
that's
as it
my
is.
point. That's my
And,
point. That's what
Yeah.
is
And Senator,
underlying
I there's a novel concept here. If the rent were raised, because you're moving to an income approach where these counties decide that's necessary, the taxes raised too. Remember, the property tax value is not going to be left at the static number that it is currently. So I would argue that it actually creates a further disincentive to further raise rent.
A further disincentive to
Raise rent.
raise rent.
Because you're using the income
Well,
law.
well, an income approach is being used now on commercial property.
Where they can get the information, and what we heard our expert witness tell us is that they cannot get that information in many instances. What this bill does say is that if they are that institutional investor, over 200 homes, single-family homes, that is no longer an option, that the information will be provided. Again, trying to use taxes to direct policy rather than mandates.
Senator Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman Tiller, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the difference
fine.
between this and Senate Bill 463 that we have on the floor tomorrow. So if this bill passes today, but we're voting on 463 tomorrow that has the 500 home cap, is this bill still necessary?
It goes, I do think it's necessary. I think there's 463, I don't remember the numbers of the law, but we're talking about Senator Dolezal's bill. Senator, I think yours had an exemption for the build to rent communities, did it not? Maybe. The build to rent, or the rent to build to rent communities was accepted in your bill?
It did not, correct. It did not, if you're adding housing stock, we
y'all thought it was-
did not have that applied to.
And then mine grabs that, and mine also requires that if the county decides to use the income approach that you've heard Senators Hodges through or talk about, then they have to provide that information. So it would come down to, if there is conflicting language, it would come down to which one the governor signs when, I
Which one
suppose.
they sign
But I
last,
think
yeah.
there's gonna be an amendment based solely on my listening to this debate around the table that's gonna drop that 2,000 to 500 anyway, and I'm gonna consider that friendly.
I'll agree to make that amendment.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so first, we would need to have a motion on the underlying bill to move forward.
Motion to pass, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second? Second by Senator Hodges.
Amendment.
So now we're open for an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that on line 16, we make a very small little amendment. We just drop one of those zeros and make it 200 properties.
All right. Should we try to be consistent with the 500 over there, or is it 200? I guess
For the-
first of all,
For the sake of, would you consider doing 500 just for the sake of consistency across the other boards? I'm looking at the eyes of the committee and.
500 it is.
Is that 500?
okay. We've got an amendment to drop the 2,000 to 500. Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a second. So first of all, any other amendments anybody wants to throw out there? I guess I should ask that. On the amendment, any discussion? All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could y'all stay up? I didn't catch this side yet. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I think it's 10 opposed. We've got 2 opposed. So the amendment does carry. Now we're back to the underlying bill. All in favor of the bill as amended, raise your hand. Opposed? We've got 1 opposed, I believe. Motion carries. That ends our business for today. Appreciate the committee working through these issues, and we stand adjourned.